we're about, is expansion. The more perspectives you get, the more views you get, the more you can synthesize and come up with your
Yes.
own and hold more space. Another interesting thing I think that we haven't touched upon yet
Please.
is comparing Lilith versus Mary. So the idea of Lilith versus Mary, the purity. So submissiveness versus independence, and how when Lilith was refused to be subordinate, when she flew away, tradition basically turned her into a demon who threatens children and seduces men in their sleep. Then you have Mary, who's celebrated for her obedience. And to me, this contrast creates such a dangerous pattern. Women who follow the rules are saints. Women who demand equality are demonized. And, we see this. This is our difficult women, right? The difficult women. This contrast to me, unfortunately, reveals how religions have typically rewarded female submission while punishing autonomy. And I think we see that in everyday life. I don't know. How does that resonate?
Absolutely. I think even in that, like, Lilith and Mary are both of these biblical figures, and I think the dichotomy of one is quite literally demonized and one is sanctified, right? Like, literally in how culture and society has treated them. And I think I want to make something that's been the undertone of a lot of what we've talked about really explicit here, and saying that I think a lot, please don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think a lot of our personal issue with this is not even really in the mythos, is not in the archetype, but is in the way culture and society handles them and layers their lens on top of them, right? And that the Lilith story and the Mary story, to me, returning to them as an adult now who has been able to, like you mentioned earlier, choose meaning for myself, make meaning for myself out of these things, they are both deeply empowering to me. And like I said, I have a very strong affinity for Mother Mary, despite all of these objections that I have to how her story has been handled. And looking at both of these women, mythological women, as an example of how society discusses women, I think is so powerful that it doesn't matter really what you do. Society will tell a story. That's what humans do. We're storytellers. And the stories that are told about women are so wrapped up in how they serve men, but also in their sexual purity. That really is like the two cross themes there. And so I think that's a really, really important point that you raise. I think too, I don't know if you have any maybe deeper knowledge on this, but one thing that I'm really thinking about is kind of the genealogy of Eve to Mary, because in the Bible there is a moment, I'm forgetting where, but where Jesus's genealogy is listed, and it says that he relates back to Adam, so it would mean that he relates back to Eve as well, which would mean that Mary, as biological mother, likely would too. And so I don't know. There's something interesting about that to me, that Lilith was the first wife and Mary is potentially like a descendant of the second wife. I don't know. I'll just kind of... there's not a fully formed thought there.
No. Yeah, both Matthew and Luke give distinct genealogies of the parentage and the lineage of Jesus. I think Matthew does it from the mother's perspective, if I'm remembering correctly. Matthew does it from the mother's perspective because Matthew was written to essentially as to proselytize to Jewish folks who were Jewish, and the mother's lineage is, again, from my limited understanding of genealogy, is what's important. Whereas I think Luke was more from the father's perspective, because Luke was just a different purpose, was to a different audience, and so forth. What's really interesting, of course, though, is so I mean, you go back to the mythos, Lilith and Adam were created at the same time from the same substance, whereas Eve was then created from Adam. And I mean, again, these are myths, right? But
Right.
I mean, I would also state that Lilith as a myth predates, Eve as a myth, in some senses, because it's Lilith is known from Sumerian times, basically
Right.
the earliest, written recorded history that we have. I mean, 3500 BC kind of thing. Whereas, I mean, the Genesis was, not written nearly that long ago, essentially, the creation
Right.
story in the Bible. And I wonder what that says as well. So Eve is made from Adam, is basically taken from a part of Adam, and then that traces down to Mary, versus Lilith, who was not was co-equal with Adam, and in some stories was actually before Adam, depending on again the myth you want to look at. It's also interesting that both are considered mothers. Lilith is often called the Dark Mother by individuals. So
Yeah.
again, you have this dark, goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, the Black Madonna versus, the White Madonna, if you will.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
now you have the Dark Mother versus I mean, might not call Mary the Light Mother, but I mean, we're contrasting,
Right.
And what does that, I guess for you, what does that contrast mean? I'm curious, as a woman, what does, and you, as a woman with an affinity to both, how do you view that duality, or is it a duality?
I think from a linguistic perspective, I think duality is a really helpful term when we're discussing these things, because it's just easier to talk about symbols in that way. But largely, I'm attracted to multiplicity over duality, so I'll just preface with that, I suppose. But yeah, I think within this mythos of both of them being mothers, but like a dark mother that sacrifices her children within the mythos of Lilith, versus Mary, who sacrifices herself, her own safety, her own potential purity and reputation for motherhood of the Messiah. I think for me, it's important to hold both of these attitudes of sacrifice in different ways, right? That like motherhood is the ultimate sacrifice in so many ways. And I think that there's just so much asked of women. And we're seeing more and more women not wanting to have kids. And I think it is because there is this step into understanding of what that means. And I think that's a really, really good thing, a really powerful thing, because if you are going to have a child and raise a child, whether that's mother, father, with a partner, single, anything, that now becomes your priority. It does. And I think there's something so taboo about this idea of Lilith sacrificing her kids, but we applaud Mary for sacrificing herself. And I think being able to hold your shadow as something just as divine as your charity, your lightness. Yeah, I don't know. I think it really is just about trying to bring both into the conversation with one another and not letting them judge one another. Because I would like to think that if Lilith and Mary were in a room, they would have a lovely conversation, and Lilith may have a glass of red wine and Mary may have a cup of tea, but they'd be laughing and chatting and talking about how silly we all are down here, about how it's so weird the way we're talking about women, right? And I think thinking about both of those things within ourselves is really important, because I think oftentimes I'm quick to, oh, why are you putting so much pressure on yourself to be perfect and pure? Like, let that go. But then also judging the darker instincts, right? And it's like, what if they worked together? What if they supported one another? What if they actually weren't in contrast, because you can't have one without the other? They actually necessitate one another. And if you need the other, like,
what if those darker instincts were necessary? Like, we're taking you to the place you needed to be. Like, instead of trying to push them aside, they're there for a reason. And what if both, Lilith and Mary metaphorically are inside of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're part of us. Both of these are inside of us. And one thing you said, just to backtrack a second, this really struck me about motherhood. And if you really think about it, just what a sacrifice just becoming a mother is. You're basically, we always focus on, here's the ultrasound, look at this. But really, there's a parasite grow. You basically said, yes, I want a parasite to grow in my body. I know when, my mother said when she was pregnant with me, she used to eat fried chicken and all this stuff that basically you have this parasite in you that's taking over for 9 months. You try to push the parasite out and it wrecks your body, or you have to have surgery. How many, for centuries, pretty much for all of human existence, maternal death rates in childhood were incredibly high.
Yes.
Up through, it's even in some states today, like your home state, maternal birth rates are going, death rates are going up. Which again, no, but my point is what a sacrifice to become a mother. Like, men don't have any idea of the sacrifice, truly. And that actually just hit me as you were talking. Literally just, I'd never really thought about it in that way. So thank you for bringing that up, because what a sacrifice. Like, a guy would not do that. A guy would have a very difficult time if you said, hey, we're gonna inject this in you. You're going to gain all sorts of weight. Your hormones are going to go absolutely crazy. Oh, and by the way, you could die. And oh no, by the way, once you're done, no, you're not done. You've got 18 years or more that you have no idea what you're going to get when this is over. You have no idea what it's going to be, good, bad, whatever. Have fun. Like, that's literal. Wow. Just when you put, and again, I'm being a little tongue in cheek there, but I'm also not, because that's real. And so, I guess thanks, Mom. I guess it's something that for real, like, that's what a sacrifice. And to all the mothers out there, you're beautiful. And what a sacrifice you've made, whether you have one child, whether you have no children or whether you have 10 children, it doesn't matter. But, what a sacrifice. And so thank you. Mother's Day is, I think, in our society, just sort of a something we do, but really every day should be Mother's Day when you look at it that way. Like, what a tremendous sacrifice. So I don't know where that came from, but you just sparked it, Reese. So.
No, I appreciate that. And I think that I appreciate your response too. I think it's something my different English teacher at a different high school said that he always got his mom a gift on his birthday. And I always loved that. And I'm like, I really need to start doing that, because my birthday is an opportunity to thank and glorify my mom, because my birthday is also the anniversary of this immense trauma that your mom went through, right? Like, birth is a huge trauma on the physical body, insanely traumatic to the body. Not to mention the emotional trauma. Postpartum depression is so real. Almost every single woman experiences it in some degree or form, and it hits so many different women so differently. And being able to really hold space for the negative aspects of that too. To link this back into our conversation about Lilith and Mary, it's like there is this beauty of giving birth, and like you said, the joy of like, oh, the ultrasound, and we get to take pictures of your beautiful pregnant belly and you're glowing and all of these gorgeous things. Also, you're gonna shit on the table when it happens. Like, you may need to cut open your entire body and see your guts in order to take it out. Also, you may have to make a decision between yourself or this other being at some point. And I think, not to necessarily veer too far off topic, but just to add this in as a piece of this conversation, there is the argument when you're talking about abortion that a lot of people say, well, only if there's a threat to the mother, right? Like if there is a threat to the mother, then we can allow for abortion. Every pregnancy is a threat to the mother, period. Not only is it a sacrifice in life and energy, but it's quite literally putting your life on the line for the next like 9 to 10 months and post delivery. Like, it is insane to me that women elect to do this and then go through it again because of the love they have for creation, for their partner, for the world, for all sorts of things. It is a pure act of love. But that comes with deep darkness too. And there needs to be more talked about in the like mourning period of birth, in the grief of birth, in the, like postpartum. You are departed from this thing that was attached to you. Like, it is so grief ridden, even though it is a joyous, momentous occasion. There is also a death of something when your child is born. And both of those things are holy.
They are. That's so beautiful. That is so beautifully said, I think. And I don't think we really consider that.